Of what significance is the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the SS Mendi? What will it take for the SS Mendi tragedy to be made part of the school curriculum? Did the black soldiers who perished in the English Channel die in vain? And what exactly will it take for the families of these fallen heroes to be compensated? A very good afternoon to you. I'm Simpiwe Ngongwane and this is Question Time. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Simpiwe Ngongwane, standing in for Mpotsedu. Now today marked exactly 100 years after over 600 South African soldiers perished in the English Channel during the First World War that started in 1914. The commemoration coincides with the annual Armed Forces Day, over which Commander-in-Chief President Jacob Zuma presided in KwaZulu-Natal. Now, be quiet and calm, my countrymen, for what is taking place is exactly what you came to do. You are going to die. But that is what you came to do. Brothers, we are drilling the death drill. Now, these are some of the words of encouragement from a fellow compatriot, Williams Wauchope, when their ultimate fate became inevitable. But just how much do South Africans know about their history? We are live, therefore you can call us and air your views on the following numbers: 089 110 4210, or you can tweet us your comments. Our Twitter handle is @QuestionTime24. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, my guests are Professor Natasha Ellenk, University of Johannesburg, Department of Historical Studies, and via Skype we're joined by Brenda Shepherd, the author of Men of the Mendi. We're also expecting to be joined by Advocate Sonwabile Manqotshwa, who is the National Heritage Council CEO from Durban. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having us.
All right, now, Professor, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
We celebrated exactly 100 years since the SS Mendi tragedy. So, of what significance is this anniversary of the sinking of the Mendi?
Well, it reminds us of a number of different things. First of all, it reminds us that contrary to a lot of what people think, black Africans did fight in a number of important wars, like the South African War, like the First World War, like the Second World War. And I use the word fight because although black troops in the First World War from South Africa and other colonial countries were only employed as service labor, supposed to be working behind the trenches, for instance, their contribution was an immense one. And it's all too easy to forget this. And I think that everything that we've heard on the television and the radio over the last day or so about how these kinds of events have slipped from our memory is true, because it was a signal service that the men who died with the sinking of the Mendi did for South Africa. And let the listeners not forget and the viewers not forget that there were a lot of other South African men and some women who also fought in the First World War and lost their lives in the trenches, in the battlefields of the Somme, for instance.
Right. Just how well do we know this tragedy? How well do our children know this tragedy? And what would it take for it to be incorporated into the school curriculum?
Okay, this is a question that I have to answer with two different answers. Firstly, I think many South African historians are familiar with what happened around the Mendi for a number of reasons. One has to do with the fact that the Reverend, and I see that you got his name wrong on the prompt, Isaac Wauchope, is a very important figure in the history of the Eastern Cape, in black intellectual history in South Africa, and many people know him for his contributions as a journalist, as a poet, those moving words that you spoke. Over the last couple of years, certainly the last 20 years or so, South Africans have done some excellent research into the First World War and the participation of black South Africans in the First World War. The problem, of course, is how do we get that knowledge out of the historical profession, out of the university classrooms, and into the consciousness of the wider South African public.
Sure. Now, Brenda, hello again. Now, did the black soldiers who died in that tragedy die in vain?
Well, you know, their story has really been hidden. You know, after that hearing in London, the documents, the transcripts to the hearing became a classified document. top secret. And for 50 years, that really was hidden from view. And as a result of that, the story, a large section of the story has been lost. And only now, is interest in the Mendi becoming synonymous with heroism in our country. And it's not just a story of Black South Africans or white South Africans. These men came from all different walks of life throughout South Africa, and also the British protectorates of Lesotho land, Botswana, Bechuanaland, and Swaziland.
And having said that, do you think the government's efforts to commemorate the event quite commendable?
Still, a lot of the families have been left out, and I've compiled the roll of honor, and I compiled the roll of honor in according to the numbers that these soldiers were issued, and there it gives you a very good idea of where a lot of these soldiers came from. But still, it is incomplete. A lot of these men have no details, so I don't think all the families have actually realized that their ancestors were on board the ship. And I speak particularly of a tribe that I found by chance through my research in the foothills of the Drakensberg, and this is the Amangwani. They, until I arrived there with the roll of honor, had no idea what had happened to their men. They'd gone off to war, and they'd never been seen again.
Now, Professor, taking another trip down memory lane, I know this event will obviously open up wounds and, and some other issues that we definitely need to tackle. Now, a while back, we saw the vandalism and the desecration of some of the colonialist statues in different parts of the country, and white people argued that that was in violation of South Africa's history. But then, do their view hold so much merit in taking into cognizance the nationalist government's policies at the time?
Simpiwe, I think you've asked me a couple of different questions there. I think that in a funny way, the vandalism of statues that accompanied the Rhodes Must Fall protest, some of the accompanying protests around, for instance, the statues in Pretoria, there have been statues across the country that have been violated, have in a rather sad way brought history and historical consciousness into the public view. So from something bad, I think it's evoked a very important discussion about how we remember the past. And I certainly wouldn't say that we ought to be thinking only about the symbols of the white colonial past. I think it would be great if we could have suitable commemoration of other elements of our colonial past. But I wonder if I could just take a small digression here, because it might be heartening for the viewers to note that in the black press, every year after the sinking of the Mendi, and I'm talking about a number of significant newspapers like Umtheteli Wabantu, the event was commemorated and remembered every year. Societies were set up called things like Mendi Memorial Commemoration Societies, and this was very much the case up until the 1950s, and then the immediate memory of those who had been alive at the time of the memory faded. So I'm sorry for the digression there, but there is something to be said for the fact that some elements of the population did remember the Mendi in the years immediately after its sinking.
Yeah, but then, Professor, there are certain issues that we certainly cannot avoid. We certainly cannot shy away, like the racial prejudice, like racism. There was also talk of racial prejudice in that the captain of the vessel that crashed into the SS Mendi, his name was Henry Stamp, actually failed to render any assistance to the mainly black survivors of that incident. Yes,
I mean, it's a tragic event in the history, and there's no doubt in my mind that even if Stamp himself wasn't responsible for coming to the aid of the soldiers and the other people on the Mendi, that some further aid should have been rendered. But again, we weren't there, so we can't really comment. But it is certainly the case that from the beginning of something like the Bantu Education Act in the early 1950s, these kinds of episodes were systematically wiped out of not only white history textbooks, but black history textbooks. And those injustices, and it's not just the Mendi, there are many similar examples, ought to be rectified.
Indeed.
and they don't get enough space. Sorry.
All right, Brenda, I know you wanted to weigh in on this, but then please hold your thoughts. We'll take a short break now, and we'll be back with you a little later on. Now, a reminder that you can call us and air your views on the following numbers at the bottom of the screens right now. It's 089 110 4210. Question time. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Look, we need to talk. I just need some space.
Claim your extra cold space with the new 500ml fridge pack. The only way to pour the perfect beer, this professional barman would tell you, is into a glass tilted at exactly 45 degrees. Oh, bless you. Bless you, sir. Bless you again. Well, we'd say the perfect way to pour a beer is at this angle, straight into your mouth. Get a case of Amstel Lager 330ml handies for only $179.99 from Tops at Spar.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guests are Professor Natasha Ellenk from the University of Johannesburg Department of Historical Studies, and joining us from our Durban studio is Advocate Sonwabile Manqotshwa, who is the National Heritage Council CEO. And of course, earlier on we spoke via Skype to Brenda Shepherd, who is the author of Men of the Mendi. Very good afternoon to you, Advocate. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and good to talk to you.
All right, indeed. Now, we are talking about the commemoration of the SS Mendi and just what it means to us as South Africans. So are other events such as the Battle of Isandlawana and the Difakane wars treated any better?
I can't hear now. It's breaking. It is broken.
Can you not hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right. Please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
If you talk about the battle of the anti-colonial wars, which ran over 150 years in South Africa, are very much important, and then therefore cannot be delinked from Mendi itself. So what I'm saying is that this is a very important, history, and we were talking about here 150 years almost of anti-colonial wars, and 100 years of these anti-colonial wars or frontier wars were fought in the Eastern Cape, and various historians have tried to interpret and bring this to the domain of epistemology. The wars, for instance, are strangled between the 1700s. In fact, the three first frontier wars, which were fought by Khoisan, and as well as other wars where that featured, and the longest war that featured Maqoma in the between 1850 and 1853, and then the war of the Axe, the Blood River, and all of these very important wars, and then of course and Isandlwana, and fortunately in the Eastern Cape, the National Heritage Council is assisting with the provincial government with what is called Home of Legends. That actually captures this very important history of the wars of dispossession. But also we'll recall that Mendi cannot be separated then again from the formation of the Native African National Congress, which after the wars, the founders of the Native African National Congress have deemed it fit to form what was called a parliament of the oppressed people, which was the Native African National Congress. To actually
they advocate, but thank you so much. We got to take this call now. We've got Bushiri on the line in Pretoria. Very good afternoon to you, Bushiri. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, afternoon. How are you?
Great. How are you? What's on your mind?
All right. I really concur with your guest that part of our history is not really maybe told or taught at school because it wasn't incorporated in the curriculum. Some of us, I personally, for the first time I hear about the Mendi. The thing is, if it is not incorporated in our curriculum, it will be difficult for the young ones also to learn about our past and also to commemorate and celebrate those who gave their life for us to attain democracy. It is quite important for the government maybe to also incorporate everything in order for the young ones to learn about our past and also to celebrate those who gave their life for the betterment of our country so that they are not forgotten and we can also have the history being documented. Like I heard your guest saying that, of course, in the 50s, in some of them it was commemorated in one of the African newspapers. But we need more of that in order for the history of our country to be exposed to all of the history so that we can commemorate and celebrate those who really gave their lives for the betterment of the country.
All right, quite a valid point you made there, Bushiri. Thank you so much for your time. Now, Professor, I could see you nodding quite vigorously. What do you have to weigh on this?
Well, one of the problems with the teaching of South African history in our schools at the moment is that it takes place alongside another subject called geography as part of a subject called social studies. Yeah. And so there really isn't a lot of space in the curriculum to deal with history. I believe there's a ministerial task force appointed by the Minister of Basic Education to investigate instituting history as a separate subject in school so that we can teach more. Our teachers can teach their pupils more about South African history. And I would encourage listeners, if they have any influence on the Department of Basic Education and Training, to encourage them to institute history as a separate subject in schools. Because at the moment, the social sciences curriculum, which includes history, takes pupils from basically pre-colonial history in about grade 4 up until the last 50 years of the 20th century in matric. And so by the time they've reached grade 9, the students aren't, or the pupils, the learner pupils, are not covering any of the kinds of history that the various, the advocate and the caller have referred to just now.
All right, we've got another caller. We've got Eric from Rustenburg. A very good afternoon to you, Eric.
Yes, afternoon, Paul. Thank you for taking my call.
Well, Simpi was my name.
Yes, a lot of stories goes untold in our history, and nobody wants to take responsibility of that. They always want to distort the truth. The first time I heard about the SS Mendi was last year, December, and the tragedy happened 100 years ago. I'm advised and told that there was a commission of inquiry held in England, and that commission of inquiry was summarily stopped. And I think we need people that can come up and tell us the truth, what is happening. For instance, nobody wants to take a responsibility of telling us now what is happening within South African context. Where is Wauchope and what is happening to them? And I think it is this kind of issues that we need to raise and voice out. Truth must be told and we need to take responsibility. Thank you very much.
All right, Eric, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your call. All right, Advocate, I'm gonna ask you to respond. Advocate, I'm gonna ask you to respond, but then before you respond, Brenda, I'm gonna ask you this simple question. Your book is quite a compelling read, and perhaps Isaac Gyoba is the best known of the Mendi victims. He was the pastor who calmed the men who were facing death in the face by telling them those remarkable words. And again, I'm gonna quote them. He said, "Be quiet and calm, my countrymen, for what is taking place is exactly what you came here to do." You are going to die. Brothers, we are dreading the death reel. We are the sons of Africa. Profound words there, isn't it?
Very profound words. But I just want to go back to what the last caller has said. In my book, I've actually incorporated a large section of the transcripts from that hearing that was held in London, and which was subsequently classified as a secret document. So it is there now for people to read if they are interested in that portion of the history that has really been concealed for so many years. And my book, Men of the Mendi, actually covers quite comprehensively, although it is an historical novel, but it deals with real people and the real facts of what happened on board the Mendi. And just one other thing, I really would like to speak about the monuments to the men of the Mendi that are dotted around South Africa, because a number of these monuments that I've visited, and particularly the one in Port Elizabeth, in Mendi, in the corner of Mendi and Ferguson Road, it stands almost derelict. There are no names on these monuments at all. So it just says this is a monument to the Mendi, but none of the soldiers are named. And this is the same with that magnificent bust in Attridgeville, which depicts the upper torso of a soldier with holding onto the rail, an arm sort of raised up to the sky. But for any passerby walking past this bust, they have no idea that this is related to the Mendi, nor is there a plaque commemorating the men, particularly from that area that perished on the ship. And lastly, the war memorial in King Williamstown was built by public subscription, which means that people of the town contributed to the building of this monument. It wasn't a government project. And all the names, black and white alike, are listed on this monument, all those that fell during this Great War. But the monument stands amongst total decay and dereliction, where the names of the South African Native Labour contingent is. Below this monument has been used as a toilet area. There's been no honour and regard for these fallen heroes of ours.
All right, Brenda, thank you for your point. Advocate, you want to indulge us on why exactly aren't these fallen heroes honoured? Why aren't their names on plaques, like Brenda's just mentioned?
I think the National Heritage Council, given its mandate, has taken upon itself to decolonize this, African heritage, because we have actually seen a situation where this history is told from different angles, and the narrative is very important that it's expanded and cleared of distortions. We've launched, for instance, in a call. We've made a call for South Africans to come forward through our funding, a mandate. And there's one book that the Heritage Council commissioned through that call, a book by Reverend Bai, that we're still going to launch at the Heritage Council. Unfortunately, he passed on, and may his soul rest in peace. But of course, what's important is a perspective that actually comes, in that book. There's a saying that until lions begin to tell their own stories, otherwise the story will always be told by the hunter.
By the hunter, yeah, and indeed. Unfortunately, we haven't got much time there, Advocate. Unfortunately, we haven't got much time, and we have to end it there. And Advocate Makuchwana, the CEO of National Heritage Council, thank you so much for your time. Brenda Shepherd, the author of Men of the Mendi, thank you so much for your time and for joining us. And of course, to you, Professor Natasha Elling from the Department of Historical Studies at the University of Johannesburg, thank you so much for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure having you all on the show. And then, most importantly, thank you for taking time to join us this afternoon. Till next time, then, it's goodbye from Johannesburg.